This video is brought to you by Global Men's Wellness, your 24/7 AI health expert. No copays, waiting rooms, or awkward conversations. Just real answers whenever you need them. Visit globalmenswellness.com to try it free and get your own on-demand concierge-level wellness expert today.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 21st Century Man podcast. You know we always like to go deep.
Absolutely. Deep dives into these fascinating topics.
This time we're taking on Chapter 77.
Chapter 77, Erectile Dysfunction Explained.
Oh, boy. This is a topic a lot of guys think about and maybe are even a little afraid to talk about.
It can be a sensitive subject for sure, but it's so important for men's health overall.
Right. It's not just about sex. It's really about understanding your body.
Exactly. And Dr. Brandeis does such a good job in this chapter of taking a topic that could feel clinical and making it relatable. And I love how he starts it off.
Yeah, he kicks off with a story about Jack and Stacey, this couple who are, they've got kids, they've got demanding careers, all the things of life are happening.
It's like he's speaking to every guy out there.
Totally. And then they finally get that long-awaited vacation.
That chance to reconnect.
Exactly. And then, bam, Jack has trouble. He experiences erectile dysfunction.
And you can just feel the tension, right? The disappointment. It's something a lot of couples have probably been through.
For sure. And that's where Dr. Brandeis really shines, because he uses that story to make a bigger point. He says, look, this isn't just a personal setback. It could be a sign.
An early warning signal.
Yeah,
Here.
About your overall health.
And that's so crucial because, men often tend to ignore these things.
So true. We brush it off or we're embarrassed to talk about it. But Dr. Brandeis is basically saying, hey, pay attention to your body. He's trying to tell you something.
And one of the first things he talks about is something a lot of guys are probably familiar with, morning wood, or as he calls it, nighttime erections.
So he's actually saying that those erections you get in the middle of the night or when you wake up in the morning, those are like a natural checkup.
Yeah, like your body's own little self-assessment. It's actually fascinating why this happens. During REM sleep, when those erections occur, it's like a workout for the penis. It's stretching the tissues.
Giving it that oxygen.
And those nutrients it needs, which in the long run helps keep things functioning properly, prevents stiffness, scarring. It's amazing, really.
So essentially, regular morning wood is a good thing.
It is. It's generally a sign that things are working as they should be down there.
But what happens when that morning wood starts to fade away? You're not getting those regular erections anymore.
Well, that's when you need to pay attention, because Dr. Brandeis is pretty clear about that. He says a persistent reduction in those nighttime erections, that's often one of the earliest signs.
Of declining blood flow.
Exactly, to the penis. And that's not something you want to ignore. It's like your body's subtle way of saying, hey, buddy, something might be off with your circulation.
Makes sense. And, we can't talk about this without acknowledging the aging process, right? Like as men get older, their physiology changes. So how does aging factor into all of this?
Well, Dr. Brandeis makes this really interesting point. He suggests that the penis is like a super sensitive barometer for your circulatory health as you age.
Okay, that's an interesting way to put it.
Because, robust blood flow is absolutely essential for good erectile function, right? So any changes that happen to your vascular system as you get older, any little issues, they often show up there first.
Kind of like a canary in the coal mine for your blood vessels.
That's a great way to think about it. It's a reminder that as we get older, those shifts in sexual function, they might be pointing to broader changes happening within our bodies.
So this brings us to the heart of the chapter, right? Yeah. The major causes of ED. And Dr. Brandeis breaks them down into two main buckets. Issues with blood pressure and blood flow, and then problems with nerve signals.
And he actually states that the majority of ED cases, like the vast majority,
around 85%.
85%, are actually due to decreased circulation.
So before we dive into specifics of that, can you just give us a basic understanding of how erections actually work mechanically?
Sure. Dr. Brandeis uses this really helpful analogy. Imagine you're trying to inflate an air mattress. You need that strong flow of air, right? To fill it up and make it firm.
And if there's a leak or the pump isn't powerful enough?
Exactly. You won't achieve that firmness. It's the same principle with an erection. The penis needs to fully engorge with blood to become erect.
So that's where those circulation issues come into play.
Precisely.
And the first factor he mentions under decreased circulation is narrowed arteries. Which makes sense. If the arteries are narrowed, less blood can get through. But why are the arteries in the penis so susceptible to this narrowing?
Okay, so picture this. The arteries in the penis are super tiny. We're talking 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter. think like the tip of a pen.
Wow, that is small.
So because they're so small, they're incredibly vulnerable to plaque buildup. You know those fatty deposits that can clog up your arteries?
So even a little bit of plaque can cause a big problem.
Exactly. It's like trying to push a lot of water through a tiny straw. Any little obstruction is going to have a major impact.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's narrowed arteries. What about leaking veins? How does that play into erectile function?
This one is a bit more complex. It has to do with the pressure system inside the penis. So when you get an erection, blood rushes into these spongy chambers called sinusoids. And as they fill up, the pressure inside the penis increases.
Okay, I'm following so far.
And that increased pressure is what compresses the veins that normally drain blood away. So it creates the seal, this natural seal, that traps the blood in the penis and keeps it rigid. But if you're not getting enough blood flow in the first place because of circulatory issues.
The pressure won't be high enough to seal those veins.
Right. So you end up with a leak. Blood escapes, and you can't achieve that full, firm erection. Dr. Brandeis uses this great image. He says it's like a jump that falls short. You just don't have the power to make it all the way.
So it's not just about the blood flowing in, it's also about making sure it stays there.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Now, Dr. Brandeis talks about another key component here, the endothelium. Can you explain what that is and why it's so important for this whole process?
Think of your blood vessels like a network of pipes. And lining those pipes is this super thin layer, just a single cell thick, but it does so much work. That's your endothelium.
And what's its role in all this?
Well, one of its most critical jobs is to produce nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide. We hear that term a lot when talking about men's health.
Yeah.
So what does nitric oxide actually do?
Well, in terms of erections, think of it as the on switch. It's a signaling molecule that tells the smooth muscles in the walls of your blood vessels to relax and open up. And that's what allows that rush of blood into the penis to create an erection. But if your endothelium is damaged, it can't produce enough nitric oxide. And that's a problem.
So what can damage this endothelium?
Oh, several things, unfortunately. High blood pressure, diabetes,
That'll be
the actual plaque buildup in the arteries, and also not getting enough antioxidants in your diet. Those antioxidants help protect against cellular damage. And just to add another layer to this, nitric oxide production naturally declines as we age. So taking care of your endothelium is just that much more important as you get older.
So it's really the foundation of healthy blood flow. Now let's talk about high blood pressure or hypertension. How does that contribute to ED?
High blood pressure puts constant strain on your blood vessels. It's like having too much pressure in those pipes.
Right.
And that strain damages the endothelium, which we just talked about, and increases the risk of plaque buildup.
And if the arteries narrow because of plaque, the heart has to work harder to pump the blood.
Precisely. Which can raise blood pressure even more. It's a vicious cycle. And it's important to note that certain medications used to treat high blood pressure can actually reduce blood flow to the penis. So it's really important to talk to your doctor about that.
Because sometimes the cure can actually contribute to the problem.
Right. So focusing on prevention is key. Things like diet, exercise, stress reduction, these are all essential for maintaining healthy blood pressure.
And there's also the link between ED and heart disease.
Yes. This is a huge takeaway from the chapter. ED can actually be an early warning sign of cardiovascular issues.
And why is that?
Well, remember how we talked about those tiny penile arteries? Well, they're actually much smaller than the coronary arteries that supply blood to the heart. So if you're starting to develop plaque buildup in your arteries, it's often going to show up in the penis first because those arteries are so tiny and easily blocked.
Because they're the first ones to get affected.
Exactly. Dr. Brandeis points out that ED can sometimes show up as much as 5 to 10 years before someone is diagnosed with heart disease. So it's like a red flag waving. He compares it to ignoring warning lights on your car.
Except with much higher stakes.
Yes, because we're talking about your heart health here.
Now, there are other health issues that can affect circulation too, like smoking, high cholesterol, diabetes. Can you briefly touch on how those contribute to ED?
Sure. So smoking, for example. All those chemicals in cigarette smoke directly damage the arteries. High cholesterol, as we know, leads to the buildup of those fatty deposits in your blood vessels, which restricts blood flow.
And diabetes.
Diabetes affects both blood flow and nerve function because high blood sugar can damage the lining of your blood vessels, and those tiny vessels in the penis are particularly vulnerable.
Makes sense. So that covers the circulation side of things. Now let's shift gears and talk about the second major cause of ED, impaired nerve function. Why are nerve signals so important for getting an erection?
Nerve signals are essentially the electrical wiring that makes the whole system go.
The communication system.
Exactly. They send those messages to the blood vessels in the penis, telling them to relax and let the blood flow in. Dr. Brandeis gives this really clear explanation of how neurons work, those tiny nerve cells.
And what are those key parts of a neuron?
Well, you've got the dendrites. Those receive the signals. Then you've got the axon, that long fiber that transmits the signal. And then you've got the synapses, which are those tiny gaps between neurons where the signals are passed from one to another using chemicals called neurotransmitters.
So it's this intricate communication network.
Yes. It's a complex dance, and any disruption to that communication can cause problems.
So where can these nerve problems occur that would affect erectile function?
They can happen in a couple of places. In the central nervous system,
Right.
which includes your brain and spinal cord. Think of that as the command center. Or in the peripheral nervous system, which are all the nerves that branch out from the spinal cord to the rest of your body.
So it can either be a problem with the signal itself or with how it's being transmitted.
Exactly. And the impact can be significant. Reduced nerve function not only affects how well those blood vessels can dilate, but it can also decrease sensation in the penis and even make it difficult to reach orgasm.
Now, there are several neurological disorders that Dr. Brandeis mentions that can affect nerve function. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. So a stroke, for example, that can disrupt the signals from the brain. Multiple sclerosis, which damages that protective coating around the nerves, the myelin sheath, that can interfere with how well the signals are transmitted.
And what about Parkinson's disease?
Parkinson's affects the autonomic nervous system, which controls all those involuntary functions like your heartbeat, your digestion, and also sexual response. It can also mess with dopamine levels, a neurotransmitter that plays a role in many bodily functions, including desire and arousal.
So those are just some of the ways that existing neurological conditions can impact erectile function. What about trauma or surgery?
Well, a common example is prostate cancer surgery. Unfortunately, removing the prostate can sometimes damage those delicate pelvic nerves that are crucial for erections. And those nerves don't really grow back very well, though Dr. Brandeis does mention that robotic surgery is much better at preserving those nerves.
So that's a positive development.
It is. He also talks about how spinal cord injuries and pelvic injuries can obviously cause nerve damage that often doesn't respond to typical ED medications. And this is kind of a random one, but he even mentions that guys who spend a lot of time on a bicycle, like more than 3 hours a week on a rigid seat, that can also damage the nerves and arteries in the penis.
Wow. So something to keep in mind for all those avid cyclists out there.
Right. Adjust that saddle.
And then finally, under nerve issues, he talks about diabetic neuropathy. How does diabetes affect the nerves in this context?
Well, high blood sugar can damage nerves all throughout the body. That's called diabetic neuropathy. And for many guys with diabetes, that nerve damage can extend to the nerves involved in sexual function.
And it can happen even before they're diagnosed with diabetes.
That's the thing. Sometimes it's one of the first signs that something is wrong.
So moving on, Dr. Brandeis has this third major category of ED causes called altered body chemistry. And he starts by discussing low testosterone. We hear a lot about testosterone and its link to men's health. So what's the connection here?
Testosterone is definitely important for male sexual health, no doubt about that. But the chapter clarifies that low testosterone is more directly linked to low libido, which is basically your sex drive, your desire to have sex.
So it's more about wanting to have sex than physically being able to.
Exactly. Now, testosterone does play a role in achieving an erection, but it's not usually the primary factor. Dr. Brandeis actually says that testosterone replacement therapy only helps a small percentage of men with ED.
So it's not a magic bullet.
Right. There are usually other factors at play.
And one of those other factors, he mentions again, is low nitric oxide. We talked about that earlier in the context of blood vessels. So why is it coming up again here?
Because nitric oxide isn't just important for the health of the blood vessels themselves, but it's also a crucial neurotransmitter that's released by the nerves in the penis. It basically kicks off the whole chain reaction that leads to an erection.
Okay, so remind us how that chain reaction works.
So the nerves release nitric oxide, which triggers an increase in this other molecule called cyclic GMP, or cGMP for short.
And what does cGMP do?
Well, that's the direct signal for increased blood flow. Think of it like this. Nitric oxide flips the switch, and cGMP opens the floodgates. But there's also another player here, these enzymes called PDEs, and specifically PDE5.
And what do?
Well, they act as the off switch. They break down cGMP, so it's like this constant battle between the on switch and the off switch.
And that's where those ED medications like Viagra and Cialis come in.
You got it. They work by inhibiting PDE5. So they basically block the off switch, allowing CGMP to do its job and keep the blood flowing into the penis. It's like putting a temporary hold on that off switch.
Fascinating. It's amazing how all these tiny molecules are working together behind the scenes.
It really is.
Now, the chapter also talks about the connection between low neurotransmitters and depression. What's the link there?
There's a strong correlation between depression and ED, and it's complex because it's not always clear which one comes first. But we do know that depression can definitely impact sexual desire and function. And that's partly due to those imbalances in brain chemistry that happen with depression. Dr. Brandeis mentions that a large percentage of men with depression experience ED.
So it's not just in their heads, it's a real physiological issue.
Absolutely. He also points out that some antidepressants, especially those SSRIs, can actually suppress the activity of other neurotransmitters like oxytocin, which is involved in both getting an erection and reaching orgasm. So if you're taking antidepressants and having issues with ED, definitely talk to your doctor about it.
There might be other medications that don't have that side effect.
Exactly. And it's not just depression either. Anxiety can also be a major factor. Whether it's psychological anxiety, performance anxiety, or even physical anxiety like pain or discomfort.
So many factors can influence how our bodies respond.
Right. And a good clue here, Dr. Brandeis says, is to pay attention to whether you're still getting those morning erections. If you are, that suggests the issue might be more psychological. But if those morning erections are gone, then there's likely a physical component.
So another reason to pay attention to your body's signals.
Absolutely.
Now, another factor under altered body chemistry that might surprise some people is low or high thyroid output. Why would the thyroid gland affect sexual function?
This is one that a lot of people don't think about. But both an underactive thyroid, hypothyroidism, and an overactive thyroid, hyperthyroidism, can lead to all sorts of sexual dysfunctions, including ED. They can also affect libido and ejaculation. And the thing is, many men don't even realize they have a thyroid issue.
So if you're experiencing these issues, it's worth getting your thyroid checked.
Exactly. It's a simple blood test. And once those thyroid hormone levels are balanced, many men see improvements in their sexual function.
It's amazing how interconnected all these systems in our bodies are.
It really is.
Now, the last thing under altered body chemistry is this massive list of medications that can potentially block erections. I mean, the list is pretty comprehensive. It seems like a lot of medications can have this side effect.
It is a long list, and it really underscores how important it is to be aware of the potential side effects of your medications.
What are some of the main categories of medications that are listed?
Well, there are a lot, but just to give you an idea, we're talking about things like 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, those are used for prostate problems, ACE inhibitors for high blood pressure, acid reflux medications, certain antidepressants, antihistamines, a whole bunch of different blood pressure meds, even over-the-counter pain relievers like NSAIDs.
So if you're on any of these medications and experiencing ED,
definitely have a conversation with your doctor. See if there might be an alternative treatment option that doesn't have that side effect.
don't just suffer in silence.
Right. And it's worth noting that recreational drugs can also contribute to ED, particularly opioids, so it's important to be mindful of that as well.
Now, the last major category of ED causes that Dr. Brandeis covers is stress and psychological issues. And he starts by talking about the autonomic nervous system and those two key modes, the sympathetic fight or flight response and the parasympathetic rest and digest mode.
Yeah.
How do those relate to erectile function?
Okay, so picture this. You're a caveman, and suddenly you come face to face with a saber-toothed tiger. What happens?
Adrenaline starts pumping.
Exactly. Your body goes into survival mode. Your heart rate and breathing speed up. Blood flow gets redirected to your muscles so you can fight or run away, and guess what?
You don't exactly need an erection at that moment.
Nope, not a priority. So your body shuts that whole system down, and that's your sympathetic nervous system in action, the fight or flight response.
So the same thing happens to us today, even if we're not facing down a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly. Any kind of stress can trigger that same physiological response. Deadlines at work, financial worries, relationship problems, all of that can activate your fight or flight response and make it harder to get an erection because your body's basically saying, hey, we've got bigger problems to deal with right now.
Makes sense. So then what about the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode?
Well, that's the opposite. When you're relaxed and feeling safe, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. It slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and allows blood flow to those non-essential functions.
Which includes sexual arousal.
Exactly. So it's really about finding that balance between the two. And when you're chronically stressed,
You're stuck in fight or flight mode.
right, and that can have a huge impact on your sexual function.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly sending your body the signal that it's not safe to relax and focus on things like sex.
And that chronic stress can also lower testosterone
It
levels.
can, and it can be a sign of overall physical and mental exhaustion, much like ED caused by those cardiovascular issues, can be a sign of a bigger problem.
Now, Dr. Brandeis also talks about burnout and deep depletion.
Hmm.
What's the difference between that and just everyday stress?
He describes burnout as this state of profound exhaustion. And it's not just emotional or psychological, it's also a depletion of your hormones, your nutrients, your neurotransmitters. Your energy reserves are just completely drained. And when you're in that state,
Your body's in survival mode.
exactly, it's focused on keeping you alive. And sex is definitely not a priority for survival. So Dr. Brandeis says that often the first step to addressing sexual health issues in cases of burnout is to address that underlying depletion. Get your body back to a state of balance.
Rebuild those reserves.
Exactly.
And finally, he touches on some of those more purely emotional and psychological factors that can contribute to ED. Things like performance anxiety, the potential impact of watching too much porn, feelings of shame, past sexual trauma. How do those factors play into it?
Well, they can affect your sexual function in many different ways. Performance anxiety, for example, creates this pressure-filled situation, and that pressure can trigger that stress response we were just talking about, making it harder to get an erection. Dr. Brandeis also talks about how watching too much porn might actually desensitize those pleasure centers in your brain, leading to less responsiveness to real-life intimacy.
Kind of like how eating too much sugar can make natural foods taste bland.
Exactly. And then you've got feelings of shame and the lingering effects of past sexual trauma. Those can create these deep-seated psychological barriers to arousal and sexual function. It's really important to address those underlying emotional issues.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 77, what are some of the key takeaways you think listeners should really remember?
I think the biggest one is that Dr. Brandeis really wants us to see ED not just as a sexual problem, but as a potential indicator of your overall health, especially your circulatory health.
So it's about connecting the dots.
Exactly. If you're experiencing ED, it's not something to be ashamed of, but it is something to pay attention to. It might be your body's way of telling you that something else is going on, something that needs to be addressed.
And that maintaining a healthy and fulfilling sex life as you get older requires a holistic approach.
Absolutely. It's about taking care of your whole self, your physical health, your mental and emotional well-being. All of it plays a role.
Well said. And I can't emphasize enough how much valuable information is packed into this chapter. It's seriously a must-read for any guy who wants to understand his body better and take control of his sexual health.
I completely agree. And Dr. Brandeis does such a great job of making this complex topic accessible to everyone. He explains things clearly, he uses relatable analogies, and he does it all with a sense of compassion and understanding.
So we highly recommend picking up a copy of The 21st Century Man and reading Chapter 77 in its entirety. You won't regret it.
It's a game changer for sure.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into erectile dysfunction explained. We hope you found it informative and empowering.
And we hope it encourages you to have those important conversations about men's health, both with your doctor and with the men in your life.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into The 21st Century Man. We'll be tackling Chapter 78, Orgasm. Too fast, too slow, or just right. That should be a fun one.
Can't wait.
Until then, take care of yourself, keep those conversations going.
Take control of your health anytime, anywhere. Visit globalmenswellness.com and start your free trial today. Get expert-level answers in seconds, not weeks, without the cost, the wait, or the awkward conversations. Real support on your terms. Visit globalmenswellness.com now.